News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into Sunday, it's another murky day in the south. There is clear skies across the north tonight and then patchy rain for some of us tomorrow. So having a look at the bigger picture, we've got two weather fronts, one across the far northwest and then this warm front across England and Wales bringing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of patchy rain. So through this evening, the cloud will lower, so low cloud, mist and fog with outbreaks of showery rain coming up from the south, pushing into Wales, the Midlands and eventually into northern England. To the north of that, across northern Scotland and southern Scotland, clear skies here, temperatures falling away to give a touch of frost. Breezy out towards the west though, and across the west, that's where we hold on to this cold front. So a chilly but bright start across eastern areas of Scotland to start Sunday morning. To the west, outbreaks of rain across much of the Outer Hebrides and coming into western parts of Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, a dull picture across England and Wales, a lot of low cloud around and showery outbreaks of rain. That theme really continues through much of Sunday, the cloud pushing its way ever so northwards as well. So a damper picture across northern England compared to Saturday. To the north, we could see some brighter skies developing across southern parts of Scotland and even to the southeast of England, cloud may break to give some sunny spells. And here, temperatures could climb up to 14, 15, possibly 16 degrees, otherwise ranging from 9 to 12. So Monday, another dull, gloomy day with low cloud, mist and murk across much of the country. Showery outbreaks of rain this time eventually moving into eastern parts of Scotland. Some brightness across Northern Ireland and eventually into the southeast. As we head into Tuesday and Wednesday though, turning downhill with some more wet and windy weather. Bye for now.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck!
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good evening, it's 9 p.m. I'm Alex Armstrong, and tonight on this show I've got exclusive footage and stories you've not seen or heard anywhere else on TV today. Coming up.
This is the sort of stuff we get at GB News when we're trying to we're not antagonising anybody, we're just trying to report the facts. We get people like this.
Yes, an exclusive. I've been back on the streets to speak to anti-war / Ayatollah Khomeini mourners, as well as meeting actual Iranian anti-Islamist regime protesters. Let me tell you this, there is a stark difference between them. Some incredible footage the BBC just won't broadcast tonight. And
we're talking about people taking their orders on how to vote from mosques and from clans, often direct from Pakistan. We are seeing the criminal abuse of democracy.
Mosques and clans in Pakistan are giving voting orders to communities here in the UK. That is the charge laid out by Danny Kruger, Reform MP, in what has been a completely under-the-radar statement in the House of Commons. We'll be digging into it here. Also, child murderer Ian Huntley has died in a brutal prison attack. If he survived, he'd be transferred to a £300,000 a year prison, raising the question, what on earth are we all paying for? Plus, absolute insanity as it's revealed a people smuggler arranged channel crossings from migrants in the comfort of his French prison cell. Can you believe it? I'm going to bring you all of the insane details on that one. And
look at that, literally directly above us.
Has the government abandoned British tourists trapped in the Middle East? Well, I've got two guests joining me to share their experiences and their indictment on this government's handling of all of it. Plus,
I curtsied as though I was like... Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty.
it's the Duchess of insufferable TV interviews, isn't it? Meghan Markle has said Netflix were holding her brand back. I'm not sure about that, if I'm being honest. That's after the two of them have cut ties. And what on earth is going on in Manchester?
They just chased someone with an horse. They just chase people with horses.
You just can't make it up anymore in Britain, can you? I mean, what country are we in anymore? A huge show lined up for you. Trust me, your Saturday night is just about to get started. But first, we're going to get your news with Sophia Wensler.
Alex, thank you, and good evening. It's 2 minutes past 9. These are your headlines. Iran has continued its strikes across the Middle East, despite the Iranian president apologising to Gulf nationals for its attacks. This morning, an explosion was seen near Dubai's international airport, and a Dubai resident was killed after shrapnel from an aerial interception fell onto a vehicle. The UK government has since confirmed it will charter a commercial flight out of the United Arab Emirates to help British nationals wanting to leave following attacks across the region. It comes as Donald Trump today vowed to hit Iran very hard and says the US military is considering new targets in the country as the war enters its second week. The US president has been attending a service for 6 American soldiers killed in Iranian strikes on a Kuwait base. Meanwhile, GB News understands that Britain is preparing an aircraft carrier for possible deployment to the Middle East. The Royal Navy has increased the readiness status of HMS Prince of Wales, cutting her notice period to set sail from a fortnight down to just 5 days. Elsewhere, Sir Tony Blair has rebuked Sir Keir Starmer for his decision not to support American strikes on Iran. That's according to reports in The Telegraph. He said Sir Keir Starmer should have backed Donald Trump from the very beginning of the escalating conflict. Meanwhile, 3 people have been arrested at the Hands Off Iran protest in central London today. It's after thousands of activists gathered in the capital to demonstrate against the war on Iran. The Met Police said a woman in her 60s had been arrested on suspicion of inciting racial hatred in relation to a placard. Meanwhile, a man in his 30s was arrested on suspicion of violent disorder. Now, in other news, SOA murderer Ian Huntley has died in hospital after being attacked in a maximum security prison. The 52-year-old suffered brain trauma when an inmate repeatedly hit him over the head with a metal bar at HMP Frankland in Durham last week. Sources say his life support machine was switched off last night. Huntley was serving a life sentence for the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in 2002. 8 people, including 2 children, have been killed in Ukraine after a Russian attack overnight. It's after a ballistic missile hit a residential building in the northeastern city of Kharkiv. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles targeted the energy sector and railway infrastructure across the country. And Canada's Prime Minister says Andrew Mountbatten Windsor should be removed from the royal line of succession. Speaking to reporters in Tokyo, Mark Carney says the former prince's actions are deplorable and it's necessary he be removed as 8th in line to the throne. The British government is considering the move after he was arrested last month on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Andrew has denied any wrongdoing over his links to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but has not directly responded to the latest allegations. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Alex.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Well, mosques in Britain and clans from Pakistan are directing how people in elections in the UK vote. That is the sensational claims by Reform MP Danny Kruger made in the House of Commons. Have a look at this.
We're talking about people taking their orders on how to vote from mosques and from clans, often direct from Pakistan. We are seeing the criminal abuse of democracy by Labour. Let me finish the point. I certainly give way to both gentlemen. We're seeing the criminal abuse of British democracy by Labour and now by the Green Party, which has been this malignant new force, has now occupied, having its last force.
Yes, he said it was criminal abuse of our democracy by a malignant new force operating in some constituencies. And that seemed to seriously upset Magic Grandpa, Magic Santa, whatever you want to call him, Jeremy Corbyn.
I thank the member for giving way. He's just made the most extraordinary allegation about an electoral process last week in which he's suggesting that 12% of all votes are somehow or other invalid because of pressure that he claims is put on them. Has he got any real evidence of this, or is this just an easy assertion to make to grab some headlines in the social media and elsewhere today?
Danny Kruger.
The honourable gentleman, this is absolutely right that we have this debate, and I'm citing evidence provided by Democracy Voices, the independent observers who were present at in these polling stations last week.
Of course, this is all in reference to the seriously concerning scenes as described by democracy volunteers at polling booths during the by-election in Gorton and Denton last week. But it left me thinking this. How prolific is sectarianism in British politics? And are some parties throwing stones in glass houses. Should we start with Labour? Here's a clip of GB News report we did 3 years ago by Charlie Peters.
Zindabad, Zindabad. Zindabad, Zindabad.
Here's footage we've uncovered of 2 Labour councillors engaged in sectarian chanting in Walsall. That's Councillor Kazar Hussain, the deputy leader of the Labour group in the West Midlands town. He's chanting at a group of Ahmadi Muslims, a persecuted minority sect who regularly gather in Walsall to promote their faith.
Zindabad, Zindabad.
Mr. Hussain is chanting "Long live the finality of the Prophet" towards the Ahmadis, who believe in the possibility of future prophets. The leader of the Labour group, Aftab Nawaz, was also present at the incident.
There you go, that's one example. And here's Scottish Labour leader Anna Sawar standing in front of a Pakistani flag, urging South Asians to take power.
We will only truly get real power if we just have more Pakistanis sitting in council chambers and parliaments, but actually having more Pakistanis and South Asians sitting in the corridors of power making the decisions. And that's where I'll end tonight, is to say the change is coming.
I'm not sure much of this surprises you, but let's have a look at the Conservative Party. Are they totally innocent in all of this?
Do you remember this Tory campaign video?
Boris Johnson, Boris Johnson. Brexit को भी सुलझाना है, Boris को PM बनाना है.
Yeah, not sure they are. And I'm sure also many of you have already seen this clip, but that's... well, let me just show it to you again, the one in Urdu from the Green Party in the latest by-election, shall we?
को गोटन और डेंटन एक जुल्म सियासतदान जीत सकता है अगर हम रिफॉर्म को रोकने के लिए ग्रीन को वोट ना दें.
Well, it does beg the question, doesn't it? Is Danny Kruger right to say some communities are getting their voting instructions from mosques and clans in Pakistan? Or is the truth far less sensational than all of that? Shall we ask my panel here tonight, because I've got a brilliant panel with me. Broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee is joining me this evening. Reform MP Andrew Rosendale is here, and former Labour advisor Paul Richards. Andrew, I'll start with you on this. Of course, I interviewed Matthew Goodwin just a couple of days ago on Patrick Christie's Tonight here in the studio. He was making claims, not quite as sensational as saying that there's direct instructions coming from mosques, but he was really concerned about the rise of sectarianism, and he particularly spoke about the Gorton and Denton by-election. Do you share similar concerns?
I do, and clearly in Gorton and Denton there was an organised effort by the Green Party to attract the Muslim vote. Now, I have no problem with people of any religion, but people should vote on British issues, on matters that affect the constituency and on what we want for our country. It shouldn't be a way of people of another nationality trying to influence what goes on in this country. And sectarian politics is now a reality. We have several members of parliament that were elected on a sectarian platform, the so-called Gaza Independence, supported by Jeremy Corbyn. I think this is a very worrying step in our democracy that this is now happening, and potentially could happen in multiple constituencies across the country. So this is something we need to be very firm on. If you are British, if you vote in a British election, you are voting about this country and the interests of our nation, not other countries with other issues that may be important to them, but what matters actually is the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there, Andrew. Linda, it's quite a big claim Danny Kruger was making in that, and you could see Jeremy Corbyn was very upset by it. He sort of startled as soon as he heard the phrase, but there's got to be something in it, hasn't there? Because mosques aren't just religious centres, they're also community centres.
No, that's completely true. And I sometimes say to you, Alex, that I did a project, a communications project for an Afghan charity. So I used to occasionally go to the mosque. And you're quite right, it's not just a religious centre, it's a hub for the community. And And I don't know why it's such a hard stretch to believe that the mosque is not advising people how to vote, because they advise on many other areas of life, so why would this be any different? I mean, I literally, when I ran campaigns, PR campaigns for them, it all had to go through the mosque. Otherwise, we weren't allowed to use the images we want, the texts we want, or anything else. The other thing is, I know perfectly well that Afghan men persuade, maybe they even coerce their wives in how to vote. Obviously, that is something they are used to. That's culture. I mean, someone's going to shoot me down for saying this, but it is culturally what happens. So I don't understand why someone has a big problem believing that this exists. And the democracy volunteers, the only thing that surprises me is it took that long to actually prove and evidence what was going on, because we know perfectly well this has happened in other elections.
Yeah.
And actually, Andrew's quite right. In this country, we need to be voting on the issues that affect this country, and we need, actually, all campaigning should be done in our language. Otherwise, why would you put forward, for example, plans to test people coming into this country for A-level English if you've got to produce everything in Urdu?
Do you know what really concerns me, Linda, is that if something is in a different language, spoken or written, how can actually British people understand what that candidate's standing for?
Well, no, they won't understand
Very
it.
disturbing to me, but that I, as a British person, might not understand literature coming out of any candidate in Britain.
Every time I come in here, well, not necessarily with you on a Saturday, but I come in on the Elizabeth line, I go through Southall, and there is a signpost. It's in Urdu, it's in English. It's in both languages. We both know where we are. But you cannot do a speech or a campaign, particularly a speech, where it's solely in Urdu.
Totally agree with you, Linda. Paul, I personally think your party... actually started all of this, and the Green Party have outflanked you on it, and Keir Starmer basically condemned it in the House of Commons the other day, but then a couple of days later he's at a Ramadan event talking about the war, which has nothing to do with a religious event. He's just as guilty, the party. I'm not saying you, Paul, but, you know, the party is guilty of throwing stones in glass houses.
I'm looking at a fairly sort of grizzled collection of campaigners on this here panel. We've all been through several elections, I suspect, between us. There is absolutely nothing new in what is being described here, nor is it unique to mosques.
No, I did point to the Hindu campaign for Boris Johnson.
Going back to the 50s and 60s, the Catholic priests were telling the Irish people how to vote.
Yeah.
Now, the danger with it is that you treat people as blocks and assume they're all going to vote the same way. You get like an identity politics. Andrew's right to say people should be voting on local issues, their own belief systems, their own values. And if you treat people like blocks, you know, that is exactly the wrong thing to do. And interestingly, actually, they're talking about the by-election. It wasn't the fact that there was this sectarian bloc voting. It was that it dislocated itself from its traditional vote for Labour and voted for somebody else completely.
That's kind of my point.
So
That's another point.
And the second point I'll say is that if there is evidence of two people going into a polling booth together, then that should be called out every single time, because you know, the original Chartist demand was for the secret ballot, and there should be no influence, either bribery or bullying, to get you to vote in a certain way.
Let me just come back to Andrew briefly. Do you disagree with anything Paul said there, Andrew?
No, I think there's a consensus here generally, but I think that this is against the way we do things in Britain. And it seems to me like a culture from other countries is being brought to this country, and we're meant to sit back and accept it. No, we're not. I think we've seen in this by-election, it's brought it to a head that sectarian politics is not acceptable in the United Kingdom, and it calls into question, as Nigel Farage has rightly said, why is it that we allow countries, citizens of countries, to vote in our elections when they're not even British citizens? I'm pro the Commonwealth, but I don't believe that if you are, particularly because you're a Commonwealth citizen, you should automatically vote.
Well, isn't that because you're paying your taxes and getting the services and using the health service and so on?
But Commonwealth citizens have direct rights to vote when other citizens don't.
If they live here.
They should only be British, surely.
If they live here and they're using the services, why not?
Not in a general election,
They should be allowed
British national.
Unfortunately, Paul, I totally agree with Andrew and
But
Linda
no
on this
taxation
one.
without representation is the old slogan, isn't it?
All right, there we go. Listen, we've got to leave it there. The Green Party hit back at Reform's criticisms, by the way, with the spokesman saying this. This is an attempt to undermine the democratic result and is straight out of the Trump playbook. We've just won a historic by-election by a comfortable margin. We've shown the country that Greens can beat Reform despite their big business donations. All right, time now for our biggest... And also, by the way, tonight we've got loads of exclusives for you. Loads. But time now for our Great British giveaway, and it's your chance to win our biggest cash prize and a brand new camper van of the year so far. It's 67 grand for the camper van and 25 grand in tax-free cash. Here's all the details.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000 and it could be all yours in our very latest Great British giveaway. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. You can even drive it on your existing driving licence. Plus, it comfortably sleeps 4 people. Make sure you don't miss out on the biggest prize package of the year so far. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. The winner may be contacted live after all entry routes have closed. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, and just before we head to the break, some breaking news from President Trump, who has slapped down the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer again. The President, posting on Truth Social, has said this: "The United Kingdom, once our great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won." Of course, this comes after an intervention from Sir Tony Blair in The Telegraph this evening, as the former Prime Minister has admonished Sir Keir Starmer for his decision not to support American strikes on Iran. Highly humiliating. So every week there is more humiliation for this once great country, isn't there? All right, coming up, a people smuggler arranged channel crossings for migrants from his cell in France. What? But next, child murderer Ian Huntley has died after a brutal prison attack. And if he'd survived, he'd be transferred to 300 grand a year prison. And it raises serious questions what all of us taxpayers are paying for this broken system. That's coming up next on Alex Armstrong Tonight. We've got loads of exclusives coming up for you too.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. The Soham killer, who I won't name anymore, has died a week after a prison attack left him with serious head injuries. The ambush is suspected of happening in the prison workshop at HMS Frankland, and the killer was serving a life sentence for carrying out one of the most heinous crimes this country has seen this century. The murder of two sweet 10-year-old girls in Cambridgeshire. I'll get their names correct at one point. I will do that in the show. In a market town, rocks the country and left, of course, Huntley with little sympathy the past few weeks, to say the least. But this whole sorry saga does raise a deeply uncomfortable and challenging questions that merit discussion on this show tonight, because we were asking, are our prisons secure if inmates can be fatally injured? And given that the killer faced being transferred to a 300 grand a year hospital funded by the public, are taxpayers getting a sore deal for an increasingly dysfunctional criminal justice system? Don't forget, you're paying for this. You're paying for this. To discuss this, I'm now joined by former prison governor Vanessa Frake and political commentator Khadija Brown. Both of you, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Lovely to see you both again.
Good evening, Alex.
Good evening. This story, of course, about this horrible, evil man, I'm sure very little sympathy is lost on him. But, of course, Vanessa, from what we can understand from reporting, he might have been attacked with a metal bar, which really raises the question of prison security and the breakdown of law and order inside what is meant to be a very restrictive prison.
Well, look, you know, most prisons, particularly convicted prisons or high security prisons or training prisons, have workshops and do variety of work to have a regime to keep prisoners out of cells. But, you know, violence in prison is driven by many things. And the biggest thing is overcrowding. When prisons are overcrowded, prisoners end up being locked up in their cells for longer. Staff shortages is another thing where, you know, they don't have sight of prisoners as much. This isn't the first murder this year of a prisoner in jail. I think we're up to number 7 up to December last year, and that doesn't include the last few. So, yeah, I mean, it's a worrying time. We know assaults on prisoner is high, a 19% increase on last year. We know assaults on staff are high, you know, up to 30,500 up to September last year. So, you know, it really is and does need taken by the horns and sorted. But the problem is that not one thing is going to sort it. You can get new staff, but a third of the staff have only up to 2 years experience. You know, they don't have that jailcraft to de-escalate violence in jails.
Okay.
So, you know, it's going to take a lot to sort. And unfortunately, Alex, you reap what you sow, and successive governments have led us to this.
Yeah, well, it certainly seems that way. Khadija, I'll put this to you. Are we just too soft in prisons? Do we you know, have we built this sort of... Yeah.
In all honesty, this is exactly why I think it is. The laws are too soft, because no matter how much funding you are going to put in any prison, crime will happen. These are criminals that we're putting inside the prisons to keep the public safe. And there is this thing that people just seem to forget. There is a prison justice system amongst prisoners, and when a nonce or a child abuser is in prison, no matter how much funding or how high the security is in those prisons, they will get attacked. It is a code between prisoners, and this can't be changed, and the government can't be blamed for it. But if there's one thing that I would blame the government for, is certain criminals, why are they kept? They can't be rehabilitated. They can't. There's nothing that can be changed within their crime. So why are they around? This is where I would definitely be pushing for the death penalty. But it would have saved so much. The guy who unalived him is a criminal himself. He also murdered other people, and so is he. So you know what? Why are taxpayers who are struggling to make ends meet paying for this nonsense? They should have been, you know, the death penalty should have taken its toll, and we would have been saved from all this chaos, and the government won't be held responsible for all this. But we keep going back for human rights and whatnot. Human rights for criminals that have taken away someone else's human rights. This doesn't add up.
Thank you, Khadija. I just want to apologise if you heard any bad language. We do apologise for that. Of course, live TV, anything can happen. I'll pass it back to you, Vanessa. Khadija's made a point there. This would have cost the taxpayer an enormous bill, 300 grand to look after someone absolutely evil. Is there a point to bring back the death penalty here?
Well, look, that's not for me to say. You know, everybody has their opinion on the death penalty. We got rid of it a long time ago because we are supposedly a society that doesn't agree with it. It is very difficult, and it's easy to sit there and say, well, you know, they should have the death penalty. But at the end of the day, the law is the law, and we don't have the death penalty in this country. But what I will say is that, yes, you do need successive governments to take an interest in your prison. Only 40 to 60 prisoners have whole life sentences. That means that the rest of them will be coming out. And we don't want them coming out better criminals. We want them coming out to be part of society again and to turn their lives around. That is the purpose of prison. A, to protect the public, and resettle and rehabilitate prisoners.
Khadija,
and I see
Vanessa,
very little of either.
Khadija, Vanessa, we've got to leave it there, but thank you both so much for coming on the show this evening. Both very strong opinions and good advice for maybe the government to listen to, perhaps. There we go. Of course, I was talking about Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, two innocent, beautiful young girls. God rest their souls, honestly, and I won't say any more than that. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said this: the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman remains one of the most shocking and devastating cases in our nation's history, and our thoughts are with their families. OK, coming up.
Just imagine if Israel hadn't been formed, actually, there would be peace in the Middle East.
At 10 p.m, I'm going to bring you this exclusive, extraordinary footage that I got while out in London today. And there are agitators in this as well, so trigger warning. But next, the special relationship well and truly might be over. We'll be crossing to Washington, D.C. after President Trump's latest slapdown of Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister. The latest humiliation in Britain, unfortunately, is next on GB News.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Plenty of fine weather across southern Europe at the moment, although still some showers clearing Spain into the Balearics over the next few days. Breezy for the Canaries, nothing unusual, however, and clearing skies for Portugal, at least for Sunday, before some rain arrives on Monday. Here are the showers moving through eastern Spain into the Balearics during the early part of the week. Also, plenty of showers expected through Italy, sunny spells for Greece.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. As we head into Sunday, it's another murky day in the south. There is clear skies across the north tonight and then patchy rain for some of us tomorrow. So having a look at the bigger picture, we've got two weather fronts, one across the far northwest and then this warm front across England and Wales, bringing a lot of cloud and outbreaks of patchy rain. So through this evening, the cloud will lower, so low cloud, mist and fog with outbreaks of showery rain coming up from the south, pushing into Wales, the Midlands and eventually into northern England. To the north of that, across northern Scotland and southern Scotland, clear skies here, temperatures falling away to give a touch of frost. Breezy out towards the west though, and across the west, that's where we hold on to this cold front. So a chilly but bright start across eastern areas of Scotland to start Sunday morning. To the west, outbreaks of rain across much of the Outer Hebrides and coming into western parts of Northern Ireland too. Otherwise, a dull picture across England and Wales, a lot of low cloud around and showery outbreaks of rain. That theme really continues through much of Sunday, the cloud pushing its way ever so northwards as well. So a damper picture across northern England compared to Saturday. To the north, we could see some brighter skies developing across southern parts of Scotland, and even to the southeast of England, cloud may break to give some sunny spells. And here, temperatures could climb up to 14, 15, possibly 16 degrees, otherwise ranging from 9 to 12. So Monday, another dull, gloomy day with low cloud, mist and murk across much of the country. Showery outbreaks of rain this time eventually moving into eastern parts of Scotland. Some brightness across Northern Ireland and eventually into the southeast. As we head into Tuesday and Wednesday though, turning downhill with some more wet and windy weather. Bye for now.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
And just before we headed to the break earlier, we got some breaking news from President of the United States, Donald Trump, and he's at it again. He's at it again. Sir Keir Starmer, he said this about him on Truth Social. He has said the United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Of course, this comes after an intervention from Sir Tony Blair there in the Telegraph this evening, as the former Prime Minister has also slapped down Sir Keir Starmer's decision to not support American strikes on Iran. Well, we've got Ben Leo live in Washington, D.C. to bring us more. Ben, is the special relationship well and truly over? And the second question I want to ask you, a state visit is coming up. How awkward is the state visit going to be?
Well, talking of the state visit, Alex, there's a big exclusive just dropping now from Washington, D.C. It's my exclusive that we're going to break on The Late Show Live in full tonight. But I understand that the state visit is now under serious threats from either being scuppered or at least postponed until later on in the year. Primarily, I'm hearing here on the streets in D.C. because of concerns over the Iran situation. The administration here has their hands full with Iran, but also because of the example you just talked about now, the story breaking from President Trump, this absolutely, well, the only way to describe it is the nuclear detonation of the US-UK relationship between the Trump administration and Keir Starmer. This latest Truth Social post from the president, I think, is the most brutal of all aimed at our Prime Minister's way. And it's been, there's been a couple this week, hasn't there? I think this is the fourth one. We started the week with President Trump saying that Keir Starmer was no Winston Churchill. That was in response to Starmer refusing to let the US military use our bases to launch strikes on Iran. Later on in the week, there were reports that President Trump had been calling Keir Starmer a loser to friends at private dinner parties. The president refused to deny that he said that when later quizzed. His response, actually, when he was asked by the New York Post, had you been calling Keir Starmer a loser? He said, well, look, I'll just repeat what I said earlier in the week. He's no Winston Churchill, is he? Then we had Keir Starmer coming out saying that President Trump should come to some sort of deal, some negotiation with the Islamist despot regime in Iran. And less than 24 hours later, without naming Keir Starmer directly, President Trump went on Truth Social, seemingly responding to Starmer by saying, absolutely no deal. Our goal is unconditional surrender. Now, the fourth attack is this post on Truth Social, which I think is absolutely extraordinary. As you just said, it says the UK, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. Well, that's OK, Prime Minister. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. That is devastating. It is brutal. And you have to say it puts the UK-US relationship at an all-time low, something to a level that we've not seen for many, many years. And by the way, Nigel Farage is at Mar-a-Lago this weekend, the so-called Winter White House in Palm Beach, Florida, where President Trump is right now. Farage was having dinner with members of the Trump administration last night, trying to lobby them on the Chagos issue. I just wonder if he has yet seen the president. Has he seen President Trump? And whether Nigel Farage knows about this post. But you have to say, it is a huge middle finger to Keir Starmer and his Labour government. 4 attacks this week on Keir Starmer. And now Nigel Farage, Keir Starmer's biggest headache, his fiercest enemy, Reform leading the polls, of course, now waltzing around Mar-a-Lago, potentially with Trump, at least with his administration, Alex.
Yeah, this is an absolute catastrophe for the United Kingdom. As you said, it's that's the second time in the space of a week or so, Ben, that the President of the United States has slapped down our Prime Minister publicly and then once privately as well. Now, of course, we are what used to be the most important alliance with the United States in the world. A very important alliance that successive prime ministers have told us, particularly Churchill, who told us to stay close to the Americans. Even Boris Johnson made that statement as he was exiting Parliament. Tony Blair said it. There's clearly something very important about our relationship. But also, Ben, we've got this deal, this 36 billion, if I recall correctly, tech deal that was supposedly in limbo recently. Is this going to put that money now completely, well, should we just consider it gone?
I'm not sure about the tech deal. Is that the AI deal you're referring to? Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm not too sure about that. I think that was scrapped or at least under threat because of the UK's position, the Labour government's position with the Online Safety Act, where the UK government, and again, let me make this distinction. I feel it's important to make the distinction every time I talk about the souring of this relationship. It is not a souring of America's view of the British people or our great nation. It is purely a governmental relationship fallout between the Trump administration and Starmer. let's be honest, I don't need to tell you, you can tell from President Trump's words this week, the view of Keir Starmer and this Labour government is very, very dim indeed. But the fallout from that deal, Alex, I think came from free speech issues. The Online Safety Act gives powers to the UK to fine American companies for so-called free speech breaches. The likes of 4chan, the big sort of forum this side of the pond, being fined by Ofcom. And you have the US administration, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the State Department saying, hang on a minute, we have the First Amendment, we have free speech in this country. You have no authority, Great Britain, to come and fine American companies. What are you doing? But by the way, that is just one of a litany of examples of how our government has peeved off the US administration. It happened even before President Trump took power. You had Labour staffers, I think maybe even one MP, travelling to the fierce battleground state of Pennsylvania to campaign for Kamala Harris. Then you had, of course, people like Lucy Connolly being banged up for social media posts, something that the administration here gravely disagrees with, even going as far as suggesting this year to give asylum to free speech victims who have been persecuted for their thoughts. You've got the Chagos situation, which, as I said, Nigel Farage is at Mar-a-Lago now. President Trump, although it seems he wasn't completely across the detail of Chagos and Diego Garcia initially, he even thought, laughably, that we needed the money, and that's why we were selling Chagos. Of course, he didn't know at that point that we were insanely paying for the privilege. It goes on and on. This isn't just not one isolated incident. And President Trump, in recent months, well, since he took power, actually, I've said before, he's always been very careful not to name individuals directly, such as Emmanuel Macron or Keir Starmer. He's always said, oh, they're great guys, you know, we're good friends. Although he has said the UK has problems or Europe is going to hell, as he'd say. But he'd always be very diplomatic and careful not to aim direct attacks. We've seen this week, with Keir Starmer at least, that's gone completely out the window, and it's indicative, it's a reflection of just how lowly President Trump and this administration, by the way, not just Trump, lots of officials, lots of staffers, lots of people working in and around the White House and DC in general, to be honest, have of our Labour government.
Indeed, Ben. And of course, Keir Starmer he's been doing a lot of U-turns, hasn't he? Let's face it, over the last week. He originally, on last Saturday, when he heard the news, decided with his cabinet, seemingly, by what the Telegraph reporting, the behest of Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, and Rachel Reeves and Yvette Cooper decided not to give access to the United States armed military bases. Now, you were talking about Nigel Farage there, Ben, who, of course, has been at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. Part of Nigel Farage's reason for being at Mar-a-Lago was the Chagos Islands. That, of course, contains a joint US-UK military base. How might this latest attack on Keir Starmer indicate the likeliness that that Chagos bill is now going to be dead in the water?
I think it's quite likely. In actual fact, it doesn't really depend so much on the bill, because the United States, according to the treaty, they can just, excuse the pun, they can nuke the deal themselves, which is why Farage is at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. I think it's pretty evident now that actually the Chagos deal, let me be honest, for President Trump, it's been a useful bit of leverage, although it seems he wasn't fully across the detail at the start of it. And who can blame him when you are dealing with, you know, Iran, Venezuela, domestic issues and so on. He's the president, he's got lots on his plate. But although he wasn't fully across the detail, it was a useful tool for the president to use as leverage against Keir Starmer to kind of sort of, as far as he's concerned, whack him into shape when he falls out of line. For example, on Greenland, when Keir Starmer was saying, well, the future of the Greenland is for the Greenlanders only, and was refusing to sort of play ball with America on that issue, we saw the following day the president come out and say the Chagos deal is stupidity, and kind of using that to attack Keir Starmer. And he did it again, the president, using the Chagos issue as a whacking tool for Starmer, this time over Iran, a failure to let the US use our bases, a reluctance to get involved and back up our strongest ally. And what did the president do? He came out again and made quite another brutal post on Truth Social about Chagos. So it has been a useful tool for the president, although he can't keep dragging this on and keeping it in his back pocket to try and keep Starmer in line. I think we are nearing the end of the Chagos surrender deal. President Trump, I think probably now, at least according to Nigel Farage, is almost across the full detail. And it culminates and concludes a year-and-a-half lobbying effort from two camps. You have the sort of MAGA UK loyalists who have been trying to tell President Trump and the administration that the Chagos deal is insanity. It's no good for either the United Kingdom or the United States. And on the flip side, you have who I guess you could only call, and I know some people don't like this term, they think it's conspiratorial nonsense, but you could only call the deep state. You had Jonathan Powell, Keir Starmer's national security advisor, lobbying hard in DC for the past 15 months or so with members of the Foreign Office, with members of the British Embassy here in DC, and even with members of the US intelligence, including people from the CIA. So if you want to sort of describe the deep state in its essence, I mean, that is it. So Jonathan Powell has been leading that lobbying push on President Trump and the administration, trying to tell them, no, Chagos is a good thing. We have to do it. We're bound by international law. Nigel Farage last night accusing the Labour government, Keir Starmer and Jonathan Powell, of outright lying to the administration, not giving them the full picture. Because the truth of the matter is, we are not bound by international law. We can do what America has been doing recently, which is ignoring so-called international law. The Chagos ruling by the ICJ was non-binding. And by the way, let me remind you that ICJ court that ruled against Great Britain was panelled by Chinese judges. China, of course, a fierce ally of Mauritius. So we all know by now the whole thing stinks. Farage hopefully thinks that President Trump thinks the whole thing stinks as well. And it may mean, if the deal is nuked and torn up, that the likes of Keir Starmer's busy mate, Philippe Sands KC, his North London human rights lawyer, who has been representing Mauritius on the legal stage against the UK, so against his own country, on the international stage for many, many years now. If reports are correct, I think it was the Mail on Sunday some weeks ago, Philippe Sands won't get his millions and millions of pounds in commission from Mauritius once this deal goes over the line. I think we are pretty close to the Chagos deal being nuked, and that is only good news for Britain, for British taxpayers, and ultimately, and most importantly, the Chagosians, who were kicked out of the Chagos Islands and potentially sold down the river by Starmer without so much of a consultation, which, just to add, by the way, one more thing, is proof of Starmer's massive hypocrisy. On 1 minute talking about the Greenlanders, saying, well, the future of Greenland should only be decided by the Greenlanders. Well, you weren't taking that tact when you were giving away, or trying to give away, the Chagos Islands, were you, Prime Minister?
Indeed. Well, I mean, Ben, it is just absolutely astounding to me. I don't know how much more humiliation this country can take, quite frankly. I really, really don't. Ben, I'm looking forward to seeing your exclusive tonight on The Late Show Live. So catch Ben again at midnight, and hopefully you'll be joining us also later on in the show, Ben. Thanks so much for popping up to give us that breaking news. And just a reminder of that news for those of you at home that are just joining us. President Trump has slapped down the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, again. On Truth Social, Trump has said this: the United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Well, that's pretty damning stuff, isn't it? Comes, of course, after Sir Tony Blair in The Telegraph this evening, as the former Prime Minister has also slammed Keir Starmer for his decision not to support America on strikes in Iran. Well, I'm now joined by international security and border expert Henry Bolton. Henry, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome back. Let me put this to you. I was saying this the other night. The press were talking up Keir Starmer over the last 18 months as a leader on the world stage. Is he now a loser on the world stage, as Donald Trump's been calling him in private?
Yeah, very much so, I think, Alex. Yeah, unquestionably. And we see the reaction from Donald Trump. And I think what's just been said is absolutely correct, because what Ben's just said, that this is Donald Trump targeting the Prime Minister. There is still a chance for the United Kingdom. I think Donald Trump has huge respect. I know the American armed forces have huge respect for the British Armed Forces. I spent 27 months working with the US Marine Corps in Helmand. I know firsthand how much respect they have for us and how high a regard they hold us in. However, Donald Trump has clearly had enough of Keir Starmer, and as long as Keir Starmer is Prime Minister, then I think we have got a problem with the White House, inevitably. So I think the important thing is that we're not sunk yet, to use that phrase, but Keir Starmer now, if he wants to keep his premiership, I mean, the relationship between him and Donald Trump now is irreparable, I think. And the only thing that he can do to retain any credibility or any honour out of this, I think, is to actually start paying attention to the appalling state that our armed forces have been left in through successive governments, including his own. Start paying some attention to that. Start committing absolutely an ironclad commitment to the British overseas territories, which he has shown, as Ben again was saying, absolutely no commitment to whatsoever. He's been falling over himself to hand off the Chagos Islands. He's not been particularly robust over Gibraltar. Now we've got the Cypriots who are sort of agitating a bit because they feel that the sovereign bases on Cyprus have been a target for the Iranians. That was entirely predictable, partly because the Iranians said they would hit them if they were attacked. But we've exposed the island of Cyprus as a result of our failure to protect the sovereign bases. So
and Henry, sorry to cut you short because we haven't got very much time left here, but I think you're absolutely right, Henry. This is a complete humiliation for the United Kingdom. I guess the question I wanted to ask you was, how damaging is this for our security connection between the United States? Is it going to break down entirely that special connection we had, that intelligence sharing? Are we going to see the Americans withdraw away from us?
Well, there's two things, Alex. One is, I think it's hanging on by a thread. Now, what I'm trying to sort of suggest about what Keir Starmer has to do next and the government has to do next, because they're not going to leave sort of in the next few days or weeks or months, is that they must urgently start to reinforce that thread, to demonstrate, albeit late, demonstrate a total commitment to the alliance that we've got with the United States and to support the United States in their security and sharing information. The second thing, though, is going back to that capability that we've got, because when we worry about the readiness of the fleet, the size of it, the same with our army, we've got problems with the Air Force as well, across the board. It's also our intelligence gathering capability. So we are becoming less useful. And when we become less useful and we haven't got the will to engage, then I think that thread will snap. So we are hanging on, and that's why I'm emphasising what must happen now. There is no if, there is no but. If Keir Starmer doesn't react, the first thing he can do, as well as the military deployments down to the Mediterranean, and I think now he needs to demonstrate that engagement, even though it's late and it's a bit embarrassing, more than a bit. He needs now to publish the defence investment plan. The defence budget is not funded. So that's an utter and complete scandal. And until that happens, they're actually they're basically working on an overdraft. So there is no excuse.
Henry, it's pretty dire. It's pretty dire, isn't it? And this is incredibly embarrassing for our country. I feel like we've gone through weeks of humiliation rituals at this point in time. Henry, what can happen to fix this relationship? What do you think needs to be done now?
Well, I think Keir Starmer himself has very little credibility whatsoever. I think there will be people in government. I don't know what the relationship between the Defence Secretary is and Pete Hesketh over in the United States, but they need to be working closely together. I think we need to be getting the Chief of the Defence Staff, the Chief of the General Staff, the First Sea Lord over to America. They need to start rebuilding the relationship and doing really what the Prime Minister should have been doing. He's damaged it. We need other people to repair it. I don't think that Keir Starmer himself now has the credibility, the credit in the bank, if you like, to do it. So it can be fixed. I know it can be fixed because I know Americans at a very, very high level. I know it can be fixed, but politically the damage is done. And not just with them, with the French, with the Spanish, with the Germans, with the Italians, with the Cypriots, with the Greeks. And we have sent an appalling message to any potential adversaries, whether it be Argentina or anybody else, or Mauritius, that we are a pushover. We're timid, we're wet, and we're weak because we've got timid, wet, weak leadership.
Yeah, indeed. I was just about to ask you sort of took the words out of my mouth, Henry. What about NATO? What about the most important strategic military alliance in the world? The one that essentially keeps us safe from Putin and from other nefarious enemies? Do you think that is now going to be examined by this very radical presidential administration?
I have no doubt, Alex. The structure of NATO is that basically we have always, since it was founded, held the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe position, the #2 military spot in NATO, ever since the organisation was founded. The Americans have held the #1 slot, whilst us #2. That's come under pressure before. The French have been eyeing it. The Germans have been eyeing it. At one point, the Italians were eyeing it. But basically, because we had a very credible, competent, capable military with the resources to match, we were able to hold on to that post quite firmly. Now, once this conflict in the Middle East is over, I think we'll see these allies, there's more ambitious ones, agitating to fill that slot. And we'll see the European Union as well, for political purposes, coming in to support a German or French bid to do that. Again, the only way of addressing this, well, just to say, when you don't have hard power capability, or you don't have the will to use it, to employ it when necessary, you no longer have soft power. You can sit at the table, but your voice is only relevant if you can exercise leverage in a hard economic or military sense, and you have got the will to do it. At the moment, we're demonstrating we don't have the will and we don't have the capability. So we are, when it comes to NATO, it's a different thing. The American relationship is very deep. The European relationship is one that's highly competitive, highly. France would love that job. Germany would. And we're going to have a fight on our hands to keep it. And if we lose that, we lose a great deal of influence in the alliance.
Yeah, indeed. And very, very briefly, Henry, if you don't mind, in 30 seconds or so, what do you think the importance of Nigel Farage being in Mar-a-Lago is right now? Is there any connection between this post and Nigel Farage being in Mar-a-Lago?
I was wondering whether you were going to ask that. I suspect the conversation between the two men has wound President Trump up sufficiently to it may well have fed into this. That's pure speculation. I have no doubt. I mean, Nigel, like the rest of us, is going to be highly frustrated with the embarrassing leadership of this country. I'm sure that will have been expressed. They will have talked about Keir Starmer, and where that leaves us, I think the message on the Chagos Islands has been very clearly sent already. I don't think that's going to Nigel's conversation there will do anything but sort of, just repeat an already clear message. I think, though, that it might well have wound the president up. But that doesn't matter. Okay. The president is 100% correct. Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill.
Yeah, that seems very evident now, doesn't it, Henry? Thank you. Listen, thank you so much for joining me, giving your thoughts on this very, very much breaking story right now. Henry Bolton, thank you so much, as ever. It's 10 p.m. I'm Alex Armstrong. Tonight on the show.
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Another devastating blow to the special relationship as President Trump tells Prime Minister Keir Starmer we don't need UK aircraft carriers.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain. Once again, we are joined together in a great cause. So honored the British Prime Minister has crossed an ocean to show his unity with America.
How far we've fallen from the relationship between Bush and Blair, with President Trump telling our Prime Minister we will remember.
I'm a big fan of King Charles. I've known him for quite a while.
It all comes, of course, as King Charles's state visit to the United States is at severe risk of being quietly shelved after being scuppered by America's war with Iran. A reminder of the breaking news from the last hour. President Donald Trump has slapped down Sir Keir Starmer yet again. Bear in mind, This is the second public, slapping down of our Prime Minister in a week, and at least a third one because he also called him a loser with no future in private. The President today on Truth Social has said this: the United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Well, of course, it comes after an intervention from Sir Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, of course, in the Telegraph this evening, as the former Prime Minister also slapped down Sir Keir Starmer for his decision not to support American strikes on Iran. Now, joining me now is former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. Niall, thank you so much for joining the show this evening. This is devastating for our special relationship. I don't think I can ever remember, and I don't think my viewers will ever remember, a time when the President of the United States has been so openly, open about his dislike for somebody in such a short period of time.
Well, thanks for having me on the show today, Alex. And I think Donald Trump has really, torpedoed Keir Starmer tonight. This is a devastating attack by the US President on the British Prime Minister. It's very much aimed, I think, at Keir Starmer and his Labour government. It's not aimed at the British people, because after all, President Trump is a huge supporter of the UK. He loves a special relationship. But I think he's had enough of clueless and cowardly Keir Starmer, who knifed the United States in the back by refusing to allow the US to use their own bases on British soil at the start of the Iran war. And so Keir Starmer's treachery and his treasonous behavior, frankly, towards his own people. In fact, I think Keir Starmer is really undermining the British national interest here. I think that President Trump's just had enough of Starmer's games here, and this is a devastating attack on the British Prime Minister, and I think it will help accelerate Keir Starmer's exit from Downing Street.
Of course, Niall, you'll remember vividly the special relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. And I think perhaps the other time we've seen the special relationship be so strong was under Tony Blair and George Bush. And now we're at a time where it seems the special relationship is at an all-time low. Is that because this pairing, as I have actually been saying on this channel for the last 18 months, this pairing of one of the most radical presidents in history and one of the most, let's just say, continuity prime ministers in Britain was never going to work in the first place?
Yes, I agree with that. And I was certainly one of those who argued, even before Trump became president, that his relationship with Keir Starmer would not work out well. And in my view, there is an ocean apart between President Trump and Keir Starmer. There are completely different types of leader. In fact, Keir Starmer is not even a leader at all. In fact, I think Keir Starmer is really a clown on the world stage. And President Trump views Keir Starmer as a fair weather friend, somebody who has really betrayed, I think, the trust that the United States has placed in the United Kingdom. And I do think the special relationship is now at its lowest point since the Suez Crisis of 1956. And Keir Starmer destroys everything in his path, frankly. And also, Keir Starmer's Chagos surrender deal is a huge knife in the back for the United States. It's a pro-China deal. It undermines America and also undermines, of course, the United Kingdom as well. And fortunately, Keir Starmer has also torpedoed the Chagos surrender deal, which I think is dead in the water now. And it's hard to see how this relationship can actually move forward. And I do anticipate that Keir Starmer will be out of office actually within a few weeks.
Interesting. So you're predicting a much earlier exit than some for the Prime Minister. I guess Niall, the difficulty is for Labour is what candidates do they have sitting in their cabinet? Because I guess when I look at them, Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, sort of the sort of front runners here, which of those would repair this special relationship? Because to me, it doesn't seem like any of them would also quite match or be favourable with inside the Labour Party, at least, to work closely with this President of the United States, who, as you've said, does love the United Kingdom. He's confessed that love openly very many times. He talks about his mother. In the last slapping down of the Prime Minister, he prefaced all of that with saying, my mother was from the United Kingdom. I love that country, but this is a disaster. And he said, that the Prime Minister's no Winston Churchill. We don't have a Winston Churchill currently sitting in the government, do we? That's the problem.
No. In fact, I think, Alex, they're all useless, really, in terms of the contenders to take over from Keir Starmer. I mean, they're all as bad as Keir Starmer, if not even worse. And, if you think about someone like Angela Rayner as the next Prime Minister, I mean, she would be an absolute disaster. I mean, she's another Trump-hating, far left-wing socialist. And I think that the entire Labour government actually is rotten to the core. And I look forward to the moment when this government is thrown out of office, and hopefully we'll have an early general election to make that happen. And it's clearly in Washington, I think there's zero confidence whatsoever actually in Keir Starmer or in anyone who follows him as Labour leader. And I do think the Trump presidency is looking forward to a post-Labour Britain, likely headed by Nigel Farage and Reform, that they can actually work with closely, because this Labour government really is impossible to work with on many issues. Actually, it's a fundamentally, I think, anti-American regime in power that hates the Trump presidency, and frankly, I think Keir Starmer hates the British people as well in many respects. Look at the Chagos surrender deal. It is a fundamentally anti-American and anti-British deal that Keir Starmer has pushed forward. This is a prime minister full of, self-loathing towards his own country, actually. And I can't wait for this horrible Labour government to be booted out of office, because they are causing immense damage at home and abroad. How much longer can the British people survive under this absolutely horrific socialist government that has about 15% support right now?
Niall, for all this time, of course, we've heard the press and many politicos comment on how good Keir Starmer is and has been at handling the President of the United States. At what point in time do you think any of those people must have thought, as I have to confess I've been saying on this show many times, that this is not going to last? Has this whole facade been building and building behind the scenes? Because Donald Trump has praised Keir Starmer openly many times on the state visit here. He was very warm and very friendly to the Prime Minister. Now the exact opposite has happened in a very, very short space of time. Has there secretly been this despising of the Prime Minister going on in the White House this entire time?
Well, I think that the President has never liked Keir Starmer, but he took pity on Starmer, I think, initially. And I think President Trump was very generous towards Keir Starmer. And also, let's not forget, of course, that President Trump attached huge importance to the state visit, which took place in September. And as I wrote in the Telegraph at the time, the gloves would come off after the state visit in terms of how the president would deal with Keir Starmer. And we're seeing that now in real time. And I think President Trump has always viewed Keir Starmer as untrustworthy lefty, basically, which is what he is. But for various diplomatic reasons, President Trump, I think, maintained a cordial relationship with Keir Starmer, especially ahead of the state visit, which was hugely important for President Trump. But now we're seeing the gloves are off, and President Trump is treating Keir Starmer as the cowardly, treacherous prime minister he is. I think Keir Starmer is an absolute disgrace, actually. He shouldn't be Prime Minister, doesn't deserve to be Prime Minister. I think his Labour government is an abomination, frankly, and they're literally blowing up the special relationship with the United States right now. And I think what Donald Trump says about Keir Starmer is absolutely 100% accurate. He's a fair weather friend, and the reality is that the United States doesn't need Keir Starmer's support right now after everything that he's done. It's also safe to say, Alex, I think that the Chagos surrender deal is heading for the bottom of the Indian Ocean where it belongs. I think the Labour government can kiss goodbye to their dreams of having the Chagos surrender deal supported by the United States. That's not going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Tell you what, I wouldn't be shedding a tear for that, Niall. I'll tell you that for sure. But what would Margaret Thatcher? What advice would she give the Prime Minister today? Because I'm sure if she were here, he would pick up the phone and call her. As she is a patriot, I'm sure she'd take that call. What advice would she give him, Niall?
Well, I think the only advice that Margaret Thatcher, my former boss, would give to Keir Starmer would be to step down and resign, because he's an embarrassment to Britain. He is destroying the special relationship with the United States. There's no trust in Keir Starmer in the UK or on the world stage, and Britain's closest friend and ally now views Keir Starmer as completely and utterly untrustworthy, and Margaret Thatcher would have had very little time for a figure like Keir Starmer, who's literally also destroying Britain as well. So she would tell Keir Starmer to just go for the good of the British people, go for the good of the special relationship, and she would call for this awful socialist government to be booted out of power.
Indeed. Well, Niall, thank you so much for joining me this evening to give me those thoughts on this. Well, what looks like the evening of the end of the special relationship, at least for now. Niall Gardner, pleasure to speak to you as ever. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And joining me here in the studio, I've got broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, Reform MP Andrew Rosendale, and former Labour advisor Paul Richards. Paul has been absolutely furious here in the studio. He's been fuming. His steam has been coming out of his ears listening to Niall there. Paul, I'll give you some time to respond to some of those claims, just so we're nice and balanced, and then we'll let the panel have at it. Go on.
Well, it's ironic that we're being lectured by the Americans on turning up late to wars, isn't it? I mean, they were late for the last two. They're going to be on time for this one, it would seem. But, you know, we're sending that carrier to Cyprus to protect the sovereign base area, quite right, too. The Defence Secretary is in Cyprus now, dealing with our troops.
Ducking drones by the sounds of it.
Yeah, protecting himself in whatever way he needs to. So that's that. I think it's also ironic that the President is talking about we will remember. I mean, you know, a lot of people are questioning his ability to remember anything, frankly. And if you Google the term sundowning, you will understand why he has these outbursts at particular times of the day, and he picks on targets and starts yelling through his Truth Social at people. But it's not serious statecraft. It's just him having these deranged outbursts.
On the we will remember bit, I think there's something to be said here, at least to be fair. Britain has stood by America before, and British lives have been lost in Afghanistan. I know I've got many ex-military personnel, veterans in my family that will say, well, hopefully you will remember the time that we have spilt blood next to you as well, and that one mistake, hopefully, or one miscalculation on this war doesn't undo all of that.
Well, I would say that the people seem to be shouting loudest about sovereignty and patriotism are the people who seem to be saying we should do whatever an American president says we should do. You know, and people that don't do that have been called traitors, right? You know, we are a sovereign nation with our own elected prime minister, and we should respect that more than the wishes of a foreign president. And I think, you know, if it's in our interests, and that's what Keir Starmer is acting in, then we should get behind the British PM and not just be lapdogs to the Americans. And that does not undermine the special relationship. It just means we are two different places.
Linda, what do you make of the President's comments tonight? You're, of course, hearing this for the first time here. Do you agree with anything Paul said there? Do you think the President is, I guess, now just pulling back the curtains and going, do you know what, this whole facade, I tried with Keir Starmer, we came over, we did the state visit, we tried to work on this relationship, but actually, he's clearly not in charge. And now he's realising that actually he's just going to go for him. He's not supported him when he needed it. He's not supported when he was asking for it. And he's done the bare minimum, if anything else, than joining the war late.
Well, I think he should have acted quicker. I think he should have allowed Fairford to be used. I think, and I've said it all along, that I do not regard him as a leader. And the reason why he keeps U-turning and flip-flopping around is because he hasn't constructed a central vision to feed his narrative. I agree with all of those things, but I do not think that the special relationship is ruined beyond repair. I think we need to bring some balance back to this situation. You've got to remember what Henry Kissinger once said. America doesn't have relationships, it has interests. And what will become clear is when President Trump, when it's expedient for him to start having the relationship again, that's what's going to happen.
But was this the expedient thing that he needed? What I guess my question is,
no, not historically,
right,
going forward.
But what I guess my question to you, Linda, is, and I'm not saying I disagree with you, I'm just saying, what is it that we have to offer anymore? Because if we're not offering our military support,
no. We've got to get a lot stronger about that. We've got to take seriously. We need to make some effort to get towards at least 3% of GDP being spent on defence. And let me say about our NATO relationship, and I have this from a reliable source, that our reputation has fallen because of the overall decline in UK defence capability. That is regarded
under your government,
in NATO.
Linda. It was the Tories that did that. It was the Tories that did that over 10 years.
Thank you, Paul.
That's your government.
Thank you, Paul. I don't care who did it.
Right,
I care.
but you accept it was the Conservatives.
No, I'm not interested in that argument.
Just saying.
I'm interested.
Just
No.
saying.
Let's get away from a political situation here and let's talk about the defence of this nation and what needs to be spent. We need to move towards 3% of GDP.
Agreed.
Because that is what is necessary right now.
Agreed.
That's so important, and I think that ignoring that fact is going to be a very, very dangerous area for us over the next 4 years when the threat from Russia becomes very, very real. And what I also want to say is we've got to stop doing this. Well, President Trump thinks a lot of Britain because of his mother. I mean, really. We've got to drag the emotion out of this situation and start looking at it in a rational way.
Okay. All right. Andrew Rosendale MP, thank you for joining me as well this evening. Your party leader, Nigel Farage, is currently out in Mar-a-Lago right now, I believe. He was there last night. I remember seeing he did an interview with Ben Leo on the Late Show Live. Do you think that Nigel Farage is out there and part of Nigel's, I guess, role at the moment has been to say, this is a disaster, we apologise on behalf of British people, we want this to be better, and actually the Prime Minister's laughing at you, because we did see indications that Nigel Farage and others were saying to him that the truth is being withheld from them, the Americans, about this Chagos deal, which I'm sure would infuriate the President of the United States.
Look, Nigel seems to be the only political leader that's getting it right at the moment. He is in America, he is speaking to top officials. And
is he getting his orders, Andrew? Is he getting his orders from his boss?
Absolutely not.
Was it a performance appraisal?
Yeah, but he has a good relationship with the President and with the US administration. Keir Starmer doesn't. Keir Starmer's humiliated this country. He showed absolute weakness. He is a fair-weather friend. And frankly, when you think of previous occasions when the President has spoken to the Prime Minister, I remember Ronald Reagan calling Margaret Thatcher and saying, can we use your RAF bases to bomb the Gaddafi regime in 1986. She said yes. And she had no hesitation in doing so because, Paul...
I remember him invading Grenada without even telling us, though, a Commonwealth country.
Because, Paul, we have to put the defence of the free world first. And Britain has always taken the lead on this, together with the United States. Now we're failing to do that under this Prime Minister, who frankly has lost confidence not only of the British people, but the rest of the world now looks upon Britain and our Prime Minister as not something that they can take seriously anymore. We do need a new Prime Minister. We do need a general election. And frankly, the only person I think is going to lead this country to success and to credibility again is Nigel Farage.
Well, 6 months ago, you thought it was Kemi Badenoch.
No, I didn't actually. I doubted whether that would ever be possible.
I think
I think that Nigel Farage is the only person that's saying it as it is and standing up for Britain and speaking about what the British people actually think.
Paul, let me put this to you. The President of the United States has, over the last week, made some quite out-and-out remarks about the Prime Minister. He said he's not Winston Churchill. He said in private, at least from what we can tell, in private he's called him a loser. Now he said, we don't want your ships. We've already won the war. Don't bother. We'll remember this. I guess the question now is, inside number 10, I think British people need to understand this. There's a separation from party politics and the state in some way. The Prime Minister's job is to run the effective, part of the government, the military, all these things that might trickle down from these fallouts. Panic will be inside number 10. Do you think that panic's going to trickle down to the cabinet and start thinking we need to remove the Prime Minister and bring someone in? Because you know, it's fair to say we share a lot with the Americans.
I can assure you that it's the exact opposite of panic. I mean, there is a strong sense that Starmer is leading this country as a sovereign nation and not having to kowtow to a foreign president. He's also, hang on, Alex. You asked the question.
Yeah, go on.
He's also in tune with public opinion on this, because actually about half the population don't want any war at all, and they see the balance he's striking and the proportionate response that he's putting there. Yes, defending British interests, but not just going along with whatever the Trump administration seems to be the right thing. And by the way, the Trump administration itself is disagreeing with itself on war aims, doesn't it? They don't know what they're doing either.
Fair enough, but the President of the United States has ultimate power. That's the thing, right? And so therefore what he decides... No, inside his administration he does, unlike the Prime Minister, who at the moment is very weak. The point I was going to make was, in those cabinet meetings, they'll be thinking about tariffs. We've seen the President of the United States threaten Spain with more tariffs, which would be exceptionally damaging for the economy. The one weapon the Americans can use on any of their allies, if they wish to, which isn't military force, it's economic power. That would force this country and the cabinet, I would have thought, to ditch Prime Minister Starmer very quickly.
And why are people who claim to be patriots cheering this on? I mean, obviously, Trump is obviously acting against British interests, and we have a Prime Minister standing up for Britain.
Paul, it doesn't matter whether anyone's cheering it on. This is the reality we have to face up to. This is realpolitik, right?
Well, I would invite people just to look at some of these outbursts and just decide whether they are the product of a lucid mind and a clear strategy.
You're making this about the President of the United States. What you should be doing
that's what the story's
is thinking about the defence of the free world. The Iranian regime has been the most evil regime of our lifetime.
No one disagrees with that.
And to get rid of that regime and to free that country and to stop the global terrorism that Iran has been funding, surely that's a just cause in our own defence to get rid of that. We are standing with our allies.
I'm not saying it's not.
Hang on a minute. I agree with what you're saying. The Iranian regime is a heinous regime. I don't think it's... I think the North Korean's pretty bad as well, actually, and there's a couple of others I could name. But we are saying this is a just war, and I can understand why. The Iranians have killed perhaps 30,000 of their own people. It is horrible. But what really troubles me is what happens next. We may have cleared up one regime, but we may have built a series of very profound problems across decades going forward. And how are we going to deal with that? When President Trump says, OK, I'm going to go on with this for about 4 to 5 weeks, he hasn't put a time frame on it, but his very sophisticated missiles that he's firing will run out in that time frame, I am told by people in the defence sector. So he has to stop at a certain point. And then it's over to you guys in Iran. Well, how are they going to cope?
Maybe put this, which I think might be more pertinent at this point in time, which is that actually Keir Starmer could have still done the bare minimum here and actually not felt this wrath. He could have just said, we have joint US-UK military bases, which is kind of what the whole point of Chagos is, by the way. It's the whole point of us sharing.
I said he should have allowed Fairford to be used. I agree.
That way, I don't think he would have to take any responsibility for this war. So we are an ally of the United States of America. All we did was let them land their ships here, their planes here, and then fly off to do their job. That was quite normal compared to what most of our other allies agreed. Australia, Canada, but two left-wing governments. The Australian Prime Minister, Andrew, is best mates with Keir. Even scratched out Prime Minister's name in a letter to him and wrote Keir. Even he's agreeing with the President of the United States. Mark Carney, Prime Minister Carney in Canada.
It's really made Britain look weak, pathetic and a fair-weather friend at a time when we should be uniting together as a Western alliance to defeat an evil regime. So, frankly, Keir Starmer has yet again humiliated this country. He's got very little support at home. He's now humiliated Britain abroad, and frankly, he needs to go. We need a new Prime Minister.
I agree that his leadership is weak, but I just don't want to keep talking down the actual end of a special relationship.
Oh, I agree with that.
Because I think you have to be practical here.
Much deeper.
It is deeper, and it needs to be preserved. It goes way beyond Keir Starmer.
Yes.
All right, look, we're joined now by journalist Laurie Laird. Laurie, thank you so much for joining me this evening. This is quite obviously big breaking news here here in Britain because, you know, us Brits value the special relationship. We've seen this as a cornerstone of our foreign policy. It's what makes Britain and America so special. When we think about Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Tony Blair, George Bush, two quite big, memorable names and a coupling of two people, I guess, that have gone down in history. Laurie, how bad is this for the United Kingdom?
I don't think it's that bad at all. And from what I understand, there is still a lot of cooperation going on behind the scenes, particularly with intelligence sharing. I do think this relationship will probably outlast Donald Trump. We assume that Donald Trump will only be in office another 3 years, although he has dangled the possibility of perhaps doing something different. But I don't think that this relationship has been irreparably torn apart. I think things could become a little bit less contentious when the next president comes along. It sort of depends on what party that next president comes from. J.D. Vance is certainly not somebody who admires the UK very much, but I think this is a blip rather than an irretrievable break.
Yeah, indeed. I hasten to add, by the time you have elections and by the time we have elections, I guess we'll both have new party leaders. I think many Brits will be worried about the short-term, Laurie, as well. The President of the United States wields fantastic economic power. I mean, he could apply tariffs to this country that would effectively obliterate our economy in a matter of days. And I think many people will be wondering, do you think the British Prime Minister here has missed the mark with the President by not allowing the US to use our bases?
I don't necessarily, and the UK and the EU as well, perhaps the EU more than the UK, but they also have economic weapons that they could deploy. The UK in particular is a source of pharmaceutical products. You know, try and separate Americans from their Ozempic. You know, there are tools to play, but I think that the point you're making is quite important. Whether Starmer wants to go into this war or not, this war is coming to him in the form of some economic pain. We are going to feel the effects of these energy price rises quite quickly. Inflation will go up. It will go up over the next couple of months. That makes it a lot less likely that the Bank of England can deliver these interest rate cuts that the number 11 has been counting on. There will be economic pain here, and I think this should be Starmer's biggest control. And there's not a whole lot that he's going to be able to do about it.
Indeed. And Laurie, we have, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you've heard of Nigel Farage. He's the leader of Reform UK here in
I'm in West London. I'm in Shepherd's Bush. I've lived here for 30 years.
There we go. I just wanted to check, Laurie. I never like to make assumptions, all right? Just in case you go, I don't know who that is. But of course, you know, Nigel Farage, very, very well known here and in the United States. He's out in Mar-a-Lago at the moment, Laurie. Of course, he was on here last night, on GB News last night, talking about Chagos. Chagos is, of course, another cornerstone of current domestic and foreign policy for the United Kingdom. And it begs the question, has a lot of this come as a result of as conversations of Chagos have heated up between the United States and America, and the United Kingdom, I beg your pardon? Because, of course, Nigel Farage has said that we've basically lied, that the British state has lied, if I may paraphrase slightly, to the United States. So that would not go down very well with a man like Donald Trump, would it?
It's not entirely clear that Donald Trump fully understands what is going on with Chagos Islands. You know, he has flip-flopped on whether this deal that the UK signed with returning it to my God, I've lost the country. It's late at night, but this deal, I don't think Donald Trump fully understands it. So I don't know that we should get too bent out of shape. I think it's very important for a leader like Keir Starmer, who is so lacking in public support and lacking in any sort of authority. I think that he is following the lead of voters. Voters do not seem particularly keen on involvement in Iran in this open-ended war, in a war that the U.S. has failed to articulate its goals. I think following the lead of voters here is not the worst move for Keir Starmer.
Yeah, indeed. Laurie Laird, thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's, of course, quite interesting breaking news here in the UK for everyone watching at home. Of just a short reminder, of course, of that news this evening. Donald Trump has, of course, slammed the Prime Minister and said in a Truth Social post that we will remember in reference to America and the United Kingdom, and particularly Keir Starmer's inaction to back the United States in their war against Iran. Quite damning stuff. I'll bring this back to my panel now, but before we do that, I want to play this clip of Nigel Farage talking about, well, of course, last night. Let's have a little listen.
I see very little prospect of the relationship between Starmer and Trump improving. I mean, even now, the British Prime Minister is calling for a negotiated settlement with the Iranians, provided they promise to give up nuclear weapons. Well, we did all this back in 2015 with the JCPOA deal. So the British Prime Minister is living at least 10 years out of date on everything. No, this relationship with Trump and Starmer is over.
Of course, that was Nigel Farage there. What do you make of that, Linda? Do you think Nigel Farage, of course, has had a big hand in the president's reaction today? In my mind, I can't decouple the fact that Nigel Farage is there and the president of the United States is making these statements. However, we have seen the president of the United States make statements about Keir Starmer, regardless of whoever's in the room with him.
That's true. I liked Paul's comment about they happen to be made later on in the evening. I mean, Trump worries me sometimes because he is such an inflammatory speaker. And I, for one, did find that remark about Keir Starmer being no Churchill. I think that's worrying, really. I mean, he's no FDR, is he? So I think that it is a problem that the relationship has got to this point. I think it is damaged. I think that a lot of the responsibility for that can be laid at Keir Starmer's door. I think that it can be repaired. As Laurie Laird said there, the intelligence sharing relationship that we have with the US is not damaged. It's not badly damaged at all, and that is of critical importance. I think, I suppose, that superficially, or cosmetically, if you'd like to say that, our relationship has been damaged on the surface, but I believe that deep down it can be recovered. And certainly I think the Prince and Princess of Wales will be going to America soon for the anniversary. I hope by then things have got back on an even keel. Yeah. And if they haven't been, perhaps the royal family can get it there. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I am slightly concerned, and we're hearing reports that the state's visit will be potentially paused or even scuppered entirely. No, see, can I just interrupt there, because I did ask a couple of contacts about that, and I don't think it will be paused because it's for the American people. No one is going to let the American people down. It will go ahead. I'm convinced of it. Yeah, I guess if it does all implode, the state visit, that would be a very, 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 very bad sign for this country. Very bad. Andrew, no one here is talking down the country. No one here is talking down the country. We do have a military that is in dire need of more financing. We do have a very desperate state of the finances of our defence budget is too low, and America respects power. It respects authority and power. It's now got a special relationship, seemingly, with Israel and not with the United Kingdom. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I think all governments have made a horrendous mistake in defence over the last 20 or 30 years. The Cold War went to have a peace dividend, and I never really believed in that. I think cutting our defences from that period has always been a mistake. Yeah. And I think that now we're paying a price for that because we are weaker militarily. We're not funding our defences in the way that's necessary. And there's even a question as to whether we could actually defend British territories if they were attacked or invaded. And frankly, we're in a very weak position now militarily. But this government seems to want to get rid of our territories anyway, so that people don't need to invade them, they're just going to give them away. But the reality is that the defence of the realm has to be the first priority of any government. The most important thing. And all governments have failed on this. All these cuts to defence expenditure, I believe, have been a long-term error. And I'm glad that people are seeing this now, but we have a long way to go to put things right.
Yeah, I just want... Claire here on Your Say has said to me, Alex, I'd say Blair's condemnation of Starmer was the final straw that caused Trump's outburst. I just want to let you know what Tony Blair said when it comes to this ally. So Tony Blair said this: "It is an indispensable cornerstone of your security. You better show up." And he added, they were just asking to use our bases for refuelling. That is a massive miscalculation, Paul, that even your former party leader, most successful Prime Minister for the Labour Party ever, is now basically saying, you really messed this up, Keir.
It's ironic, isn't it, that Blair is now being hailed as this great leader. At the time, everyone said, what a disaster for going into Iraq.
Listen, I just want to be clear.
A million people on the streets and all the rest of it. You know, here we are.
I'm no fan of Tony Blair,
honestly.
But one thing he was good at was the special relationship.
Well, certainly.
Have to give him credit for that.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the history of Harold Wilson keeping British troops out of Vietnam. That did not damage the special relationship, and it saved
so different.
And it saved an awful lot of British lives.
Paul, you can't compare.
At a time when the Americans were going into an open-ended war without any kind of,
Paul, it's totally incomparable.
Without any victory in sight.
We're not talking about sending British troops to ground assault
It's a similar situation.
We're talking about letting American planes refuel on our bases.
It was the Labour Prime Minister that kept us out of a war, and I think that's, you know, and the special relationship has survived, as it will this. To Andrew's point about NATO, I think I remember doing a briefing at NATO just after the wall came down and being told about the peace dividend being nonsense. I mean, you know, we were sold this peace dividend, and they said, look, there's going to be threats from the Islamists, there's going to be threats from terrorism, we need to keep defence spending up. And if only those lessons had been heeded over the last 20 years, as you say. So we're all in a situation now where I think all the parties are agreed we need to increase defence expenditure. I certainly believe that, and I believe NATO has to be at the heart of that as well. But, you know, we are where we are. We've just, don't forget, we scrapped the overseas aid budget to put into defence as a Labour government, and we need more of that.
We need a lot more.
Let's just play the clip of Donald Trump talking about Keir Starmer earlier this week on Tuesday in just a moment.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
That was actually a little... In many ways, that was a little nicer than the comments he's made today, in my opinion, saying we will remember. It's almost a little threatening.
It's threatening, that's why. Yeah.
How should we interpret that, Linda?
Well, he's saying, you know, you should have let us do this, this and this, and you didn't let us. Now it's too late. We're going to remember this. The question is, how will that manifest itself? I suspect in economic terms. And that's all. This whole situation is already really worrying me because apart from the American repercussions of this, anything that goes wrong across the Gulf region is going to have huge repercussions across the rest of the world in terms of energy, in terms of price rises, in terms of inflation, in terms of putting the brakes on any kind of economic recovery or momentum we want to try and achieve. So, I mean, I'm really worried about the general state of things here, and I don't want to waste too much time worrying about whether President Trump thinks that Starmer's no Winston Churchill. I mean, it was eye-catching. I paid attention. Let's get on to some grown-up subjects.
I think Linda's right, but let's remember, it's not just the Americans that are incandescent with the United Kingdom over this issue. It's our allies in Europe, it is our allies in the Gulf states. They feel let down as well. I would say to Paul, honestly, Paul, you must accept that Keir Starmer's decision not to allow the United States to use British air bases was an error of judgment. You must accept that.
Well, I think now that we've decided we are going to allow that, we're also sending a carrier down to the eastern Mediterranean, and the RAF have been in action throughout the whole thing. You know, the idea that he's sitting this out, as Kemi said, you know, the RAF are just sitting on the hands, whatever she said. No, not true. British intelligence is involved fully, and at the diplomat level as well. You know, so we are fully involved in
Except it was the wrong decision for our Prime Minister to deny our closest ally the ability to refuel that aircraft.
He's a lawyer, isn't he?
When they're fighting a war against an evil regime such as Iran. Surely that was the wrong decision.
He's a lawyer, and he was being led by what he believed to be international law.
Oh, international law again? Oh, it's up in everything these days.
He is a lawyer.
What about British interests and the defence of the free world? Surely that should come first in the mind of a British Prime Minister.
The bases are being used now, and the carrier is on its way.
Well, it would have taken Margaret Thatcher
and the
long to
RAF are
decide
in the
these
sky.
things.
Yes.
Keir Starmer clearly has made a terrible error of judgment.
This is the problem. It's not that he's made these decisions, Paul. It's that these decisions have been made now. The war started a week ago, and the Prime Minister could have made these very simple judgment calls that should be second nature to a good, strong leader who understands how special relationships and foreign affairs works. But he's been proven, and I think he's not been proven this great statesman on the world stage. He's actually been proven to be weak and indecisive and dithering, as has characterised his entire premiership of this country, which has left British people thinking he's the worst Prime Minister in history, Paul. Unfortunately, this is just yet another example of the sort of man we have sitting in number 10. He's constantly U-turning. Just this week, him putting these aircraft carriers out and letting America use our bases as 2 more U-turns, Paul. It is bad. He is not... Is he fit to be Prime Minister?
I fundamentally disagree with that, Alex. And I'll say, first of all, I think I'm glad we have a grown-up in number 10 who actually deliberates, takes advice, convenes Cobra rather than just rushing...
15-year-old little brother would have got this more
rushing to
accurately
tweet and put stuff out on social media.
Indefensible, frankly.
I think that's
really
good that we have somebody who's in charge who has time to think about it rather than tweeting from
There's no time in war.
We're not at war. We're not.
Of course we are. We've got
the United Kingdom is not at war.
And Iran firing
the United
drones
Kingdom
at us.
is not at war.
We've got the Defence Secretary ducking drones in Cyprus because we can't defend ourselves, Paul. Please don't tell me that's not a war.
We are defending Cyprus. The RAF.
So we are at war. What are we defending from?
Well, we're not officially at war, are we?
Of course we are. They're attacking us.
The RAF is in disguise over Cyprus, defending us.
On the Greeks.
Come on. We have to...
Yes. That's crazy. Look, frankly, Paul, you're defending the indefensible. The duty of our Prime Minister, of whichever party, has to be the defence of the realm. We didn't protect our sovereign bases in Cyprus.
The RAF were in the skies almost immediately. What are you talking about?
Disgrace, and they need to leave.
Typhoons are in the air almost immediately.
All right, look, let's give you a reminder of the breaking news from the last couple of hours. President Donald Trump has slapped down Sir Keir Starmer yet again. The president on Truth Social posted this. The United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers. Note the word thought, by the way. Note the word thought, to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's OK, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember. We don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Of course, Sir Tony Blair, former Prime Minister, the most successful Labour Prime Minister in history, also admonished Sir Keir Starmer because his decisions not to support American strikes on Iran. There's also a little tweet we're going to bring up for you from Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats. Let's see if we can bring that up on the screen for you in just a moment. And we're, of course, going to be joined very shortly. There you go. That's Ed Davey there, posting a picture of Winston Churchill. What's fascinating about this is I just think Ed Davey's living in some sort of alternative reality. The difference between Keir Starmer and Winston Churchill is that Winston Churchill, of course, worked very closely with our American cousins to bring about the end of a world war, and Keir Starmer's doing the exact opposite. So I don't know what Ed Davey exactly is trying to hint at here. Linda, what do you think he's trying to say?
Oh, goodness me, I don't know. Well, the general thing about the Lib Dems is that I find it very difficult to trust them when it comes to defence matters. I wonder how strong Ed Davey would be if he was ever, on the front line and in the firing line, because I don't see anything that makes me feel confident about his ability to understand the profound geopolitical situation we are now in. I appreciate that he's good at certain things. I appreciate that he found a niche that he drove through in the general election campaign. But when it comes to the defence of the realm, I just don't think I'm filled with confidence about it.
Interesting. I mean, it doesn't look like Ed Davey's going to be the next Prime Minister anyway, so I think we can maybe just move that along.
Yeah, they might get a few more seats,
He
though.
would probably want to transfer the defence of the realm to the European Union, knowing it, Davey.
Good point, which is kind of what we're doing with the
like.
French at the moment. We're doing this weird nuclear weapons sharing, which I don't know. It's all very odd, isn't it? Is this what you voted for? Is this what you wanted? Write into me, gbnews.com/yoursay. Joining me now is a friend of the channel, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, thank you so much for joining me. I don't know how to put this. Obviously, people who watch my show know I love this country. But how little do Americans and maybe people in the Republican Party think of our country at this moment in time?
Well, Alex, the good news is I don't think it means that Americans, and especially conservative Americans, think less of the UK. They think less of the Labour government and the Prime Minister. That's for sure. So, I don't think this is a permanent change to the special relationship. It's definitely a speed bump. It's really unfortunate. And I can understand that if the Prime Minister didn't want to put his troops in harm's way, but denying the use of the bases was just a step too far. I think that was really obscene. So yeah, I think, but generally speaking, I've been on the ground in both Washington. I'm here in New Orleans today. The people are still pretty optimistic about the UK in general, because they realize that, that doesn't necessarily reflect the opinions of the people. And, that it's just that the Prime Minister with, 30% or so in the polls, not even probably 20, he's not popular.
It's lower than that, unfortunately, Greg, for him. It's lower than that. I think it's not. I think he's sitting about 18% the last poll I saw. Not good for a sitting prime minister of any colour in the UK. Greg, what do you think would need to happen to fix this relationship with President Trump? Could Keir Starmer, the prime minister, fix the relationship, and what would need to happen, or is it completely dead between the two of them?
It might be a step, too far. Look, the president did. I think the prime minister did a great job. It's probably the only thing he did well in his first year and a half in office was manage the relationship with the president and with the U.S. But I'm also very confident in the defense and security and intelligence leadership in the UK. I think they'll be still cooperating with the American cousins, and I think that's great. So even though the prime minister has misstepped here, to say the least, I think the long-term relationship between the militaries, they're still going to be doing their exercises and their cooperation. And so, again, it's a speed bump. It's a very bad moment, and maybe he can fix it, and maybe not. Maybe it's time for we wait till the next prime minister takes office.
Greg, is the man here in the UK for the American administration the one that's currently at Mar-a-Lago? Is this the man that Republicans or the MAGA base would like to see? And I mean Nigel Farage when I say that.
Of course.
Or is it Kemi Badenoch, perhaps? Or perhaps the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey? Who would be Republicans' favourites? We're just going to go to Trump. Unfortunately, Greg, we're just going to go to Trump. Sorry to interrupt.
It was Kamala, and she obviously didn't get any extra votes because we won in an absolute landslide. So he should have used it for that. He used it to get. I filled it up, and he brought it down to the lowest level it's ever been. We will start at the appropriate time, which is basically a gut instinct. We will start filling up these strategic reserves.
What are the circumstances where you'd send in ground troops? How are you thinking about that?
I don't even want to talk about it now. It's. I don't think it's an appropriate question. I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
Are you thinking about the oil facility there? There's an oil facility kind of on the coast of Iran that could be secured by ground troops. There's been some speculation that could be a target.
Well, I don't know what the speculation is, but I certainly wouldn't be able to tell you that. I'd be in trouble with myself if I told you that.
Mr. President, don't you need ground troops to secure the enriched uranium at the nuclear sites?
We're going to find out about that. We haven't talked about it, but it was a total obliteration. They haven't been able to get to it. And at some point, maybe we will. That would be a great thing, but right now we're just decimating them. But we haven't gone after it, but something we could do later on. We wouldn't do it now. Maybe we'd do it later.
said you want to be involved in the selection of the next leader of Iran. Can you talk to me?
Well, because I don't want to just come back every 10 years, and mostly you'll have presidents, that won't do that because they don't get it. But we don't want to come back every 5 years or every 10 years and do this. So we want to pick a president that's not going to be leading their country into a war. Do you have any questions for Pete or Steve? Come on up.
Mr. Wickoff.
Steve, come on up.
Mr. Wickoff, is there still space to do a deal with whatever is left of the Iranian government?
I think there is. I think that's going to be up to the president. That's what I think. But they didn't seem to.
That, of course, was the President of the United States. It looks like he's on Air Force One. I'm not sure where he's going. But, of course, we are in a war scenario here. The President of the United States is still unleashing the American military on Tehran tonight. We know the bombs are continuing to fall on Iran, of course, backed by the Israelis. Greg, I'll come back to you, Greg Swenson, chair of the Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, just before we cut away to the President of the United States there, I was asking you, is the man that the MAGA and the Republicans would like to see, let's say, revive the special relationship, is that man Nigel Farage, the man currently in Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the MAGA wing of the party really likes Nigel. And you look at the similarities between the Reform Party and the Reform movement with the MAGA movement. And there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of consistent, synergy there. As for the party in general, I'm not sure they pay too much attention to it. Surely it wouldn't be Ed Davies. But, I think there's a lot of support for Kemi as well. But I think the MAGA wing is much more, they just have more in common, I think, with Reform and with Nigel.
And Greg, of course, at the moment, there's many conversations going on between the United States and America, particularly on this war. We've seen Keir Starmer come to the game here quite late, or at least come to the conclusion that sending aircraft carriers to the Middle East would be beneficial a week since the war started. How badly has he misjudged the President of the United States? And I ask you this because, of course, the Prime Minister spent a great deal of time with Donald Trump. He has had state visits with Donald Trump. He would have, of course, had heard from the royal family, their digest of Donald Trump when the last state visit happened here. He would understand quite well how the President of the United States worked. Has he totally messed this up?
I think he has. I mean, if you look at the disaster with the Chagos Islands, and then, after that, or at one point when it was settling down a little bit, and then he denies the use of Diego Garcia. Like, it's just unthinkable. You'd expect that from the French. You'd expect that, and no one was surprised that Spain did not cooperate. But that Spain's got a socialist government. We expect that. But the UK is different. Even with a left-leaning government like we have in the UK, you'd still expect military and defense and security cooperation, and that is just really outrageous to deny the use of the bases. I know he's backpedaled on it. He's backpedaled on a lot of things, and I'm always glad when he does, because they're usually policies that were destructive for the United Kingdom. And he's done it again. But this one, I'm not sure this is fixable. I hope it is, and if it's not, like I said, it won't be a permanent end of the special relationship. That's for sure.
I hope not, Greg. I certainly hope not. Let's talk about these aircraft carriers. Would it just be foolish now for the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to send those aircraft carriers to the Middle East? Would it just be wise for him to go, do you know what, let's just take heed of what the President of the United States has said? Or do you think he should just go, do you know what, I've made a decision, I'm going to stick with it?
Yeah, I think he should send them anyway. I mean, they want to protect, they surely want to protect the British base in Cyprus. So, I think it's wise to be in the region, even if he's not directly supporting the U.S. efforts in attacking and dismantling the government in Iran. But I do think especially with Cyprus, with the British air base there, it's probably wise to have a carrier in the neighborhood.
Of course, the Prime Minister has sent battleships and a HMS Dragon is headed towards Cyprus, of course. Not to say that the Prime Minister hasn't done that before, but to go to the Middle East part of the world would be a new step indeed. I guess the other part of this, Greg, is the transatlantic relationship with the President of the United States and the rest of our European allies. It's not just the United Kingdom that's failed to act here, is it? It is also Spain and France as well. So why do you think the President of the United States is taking specific aim at the United Kingdom and Keir Starmer here? What do you think is driving that?
Well, I think it's because, traditionally and historically, we have a much tighter relationship with the United Kingdom than we do with the other Western European countries. And you saw, the Germans came to the table. Metz even went to the White House. And so I think there is support from some of the countries. Again, Spain is no surprise. It's a socialist government. France is France. Okay, that's no shock there. But I do think you're seeing a lot of support in the Gulf area, obviously. And that's really what's, maybe surprised me the most about this is the real unity around the world and in supporting the U.S., with a few exceptions. I understand that. But for the most part, it's a great coalition, or at the very least, support for the president.
Yes, of course. Prime Minister Tony Blair. I don't know if you've seen his remarks.
I did.
Yeah. What did you make of that? I mean, he's also come out today and been quite critical of the Prime Minister. Does the President of the United States pay attention to that? And what do you make of the former Prime Minister Blair's comments?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, again, because, like him or not, he was, a lot of people were disappointed with the fact that he supported George W. Bush in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, he's got some history, but he also has credibility there. And so I think, if I were the Prime Minister, I would not have welcomed those comments. But I do think the president pays attention to that. He's very well informed. He does watch news, and that's not something that's escaped the U.S. news here in New Orleans, here in Washington, New York. We're talking about the Prime Minister and the fact that he denied the use of the bases. So it's not the top of the news, but it's definitely well covered here in the U.S. So I'm sure the president's well informed on it.
Yeah, and indeed, Marco Rubio, I guess, is being seen as a future leader of the United States far more often now. We used to talk about J.D. Vance a lot. Marco Rubio is being spoken about as the man, perhaps, who might even be Donald Trump's favourite to replace him. What could we learn about J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio's stances towards Europe, towards the United Kingdom, and what should Brits know ahead of schedule? Let's put it this way, seeing as this current Prime Minister didn't seem like he was very well briefed on the current President of the United States.
That's right. I mean, look, Marco Rubio's just had a really great 6 months or so, and I think J.D. Vance was more, possibly more well known because he was the vice president, so he got more attention in probably the first year, and of course, his comments at Munich last year got a lot of attention in Europe, and so. Now it's almost Marco's turn. He's just had a really great few months, and he's got a lot of support both in Reform as well as in the Tory party. There's a lot of relationships that have been built, especially with the Conservatives in the UK. A lot of relationships over the years from the defense and security people, and I think that Marco's really well liked. I don't think as many of them know J.D. Vance because he was relatively new to the government. He served 2 years as a senator, whereas Marco's been around for a while and has really tight friendships with a lot of people in the Conservative Party, this capital C Conservative Party.
Indeed. My audience are rapidly correcting me here, and I do want to apologise because HMS Dragon is still, unfortunately, moored in Portsmouth, which, unfortunately, is even more humiliating. I thought we'd left yesterday, and I'm obviously clearly mistaken.
And I might have made a mistake at calling it one of the ships a carrier. I doubt that they're carriers heading to the Gulf. I think it's battleships and destroyers, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Greg Swenson, absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks,
as
Alex.
ever. That is Chair of Overseas Republicans UK, Greg Swenson. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong. Tonight.
And by the way, I'm not happy with the UK